Hey everybody, how's it going? Today's show is brought to you by the letter K, as in Kamala. This is episode 417 of the Council on Future Conflict. My name is Scott, and I am the proprietor of the Future Conflict channel. Today we're talking about the Brazilian Scramble and the Kamala Show Part 2. And I imagine we'll have more Kamala shows as we get closer to the election. But there won't be any more shows this week. So we have. I have got a lot of stuff going on in my world that I try not to let come into the show. I try not to talk about it. I try not to my bad mood for the day or whatever I keep off the show. But I've got a lot of stuff going on. And so this week I'm going to use to hopefully get the ball further down the field on some of these other projects. So we will be doing a hiatus on the program until probably next Monday. And for information on that, I will make sure I'll post that on Twitter, just to let you guys know exactly when we're going to be back. I know that's not great news, but wait, no more shows. Yeah, just this week, guys. It's a lot of stuff going on.
And normally I would try and pick up the slack and fill for him, but this week I'm actually going to be taking the time that I would normally do in the show and dedicating it to helping Scott drive a little further down the field. So
yeah. So in some of my other ventures, Watcher's helping me out there as well. So it's kind of like I can't. I'd be robbing Peter to pay Paul if I just gave the show to Watcher for the week. So we and you guys got to admit, I mean, we've been around for what 2.5 years now, almost 3 years, now, and we haven't missed a lot of shows. I mean,
this will be our first non-directly travel-related break.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, so like just in case,
traveling the whole time.
You've been traveling the whole time. Well, I have never done the show from my home in America. I've always been in a foreign country when I've done the show. So anyway, and just to, like I said, pull the curtain back a little further. Last Monday, I wasn't able to do the show either, and that was kind of like just. It's just, and it's not like just one thing, right? It's a confluence of things. So we wouldn't be doing this lightly, but the show will be back better than ever. And hopefully that'll be next Monday. Like I said, if there's any other further news or any changes to that prediction, I'll let you know on X. That'll be the place to get your official news from.
I love how many chat members are jumping up saying that it was their nasty comments that's going to get us suspended for a week, and that's why.
No. And don't take this opportunity to get us suspended for a week.
Maybe that was a preemptive apology. Yeah.
I know, right. Anyway. I just want to say welcome to Joe and Watcher. Joe, how you doing? You're on the road today, right? Speaking of travel.
I am on the road. I just came through the Continental Divide at Rogers Pass, and I'm going to be meeting a member of the chat in Fargo later this evening. So by saying Fargo, most of you know who that probably is. So anyway.
But if we should say real quick that if you're around North Carolina and looking to learn a little bit more about Fieldcraft, go ahead and sign up for that class on the 13th to 15th.
Yeah. And actually, there's a lot of classes going on site that weekend. Mech Medic will be there teaching a TCCC class, and Wyoming Survival will be teaching about HF radio and its tactical environment. So we've got 3 different classes going on at once.
Wow. Well, it's all it's kind of tough to choose, right? I mean, they're all good classes.
I know.
Watch your house. So you're out of the fair now, right? The fair is in the rearview mirror, right?
Oh, yeah, man. It's all over, but the multi-a-day picking up trash out of my parking lot. I'd say crying, but that's all done now. Yeah, it's great. Love fair. It's a great economic opportunity for a lot of small businesses. But gosh, I'll tell you, I am glad it's in the rearview mirror now.
Yeah, that's it's kind of like it's nice to be busy, but after a while, it's kind of like you're ready for it to kind of go back to normal. So I get that.
Well, look, man, I'll tell you that about the time that I was having to get cars hauled away because people decided to park in the middle of my driveway to get to Journey faster, like the Journey concert faster. It was about at that time that I was like, nope, I'm about done here.
Yeah, that's true. All right, guys, I said we're gonna do a shorter show today. So let's jump right into it, shall we? So for odds and ends today, I like this. This is like somebody warning that this may happen, but I'm like, well, if the European Christian imperialists are the ones that get to space, I mean, I think I could think of worse people to get to space. I mean, at least it's not the Chicoms, right? Professor warns of European Christian imperialism in outer space. One of the sillier aspects of DEI and critical theory is the erosion of reason and rationality and the cause of writing oppression. We've seen this in the gender movement. In particular, less known is how it's creeping into the hard sciences like astronomy. For instance, remember last summer when indigenous scholars group warned that listening for alien civilizations could be viewed as eavesdropping or surveillance. Do we have the aliens' permission? Oh, boy. What about Canadian government's efforts to decolonize light, or the Stanford University academic who claimed the efforts to colonize Mars are patriarchal and another example of male entitlement? Now, Wesleyan University Dean of Social Sciences, a philosopher of science and religion who's also affiliated with the school's feminist and gender sexual studies program. The fact that Wesleyan University has a Wesleyan University has a feminist and gender sexuality studies program, that's.
I know. I was going to say, quick, Siri, what does Wesleyan mean?
Yeah. Well-armed corgi for 99 says, God wills it.
Yeah, we should be so lucky, right?
Listen, I'm going to point out that European Christian imperialism is what brought civilization to the world rather than barbarism. Whatever.
Yeah, that Christian imperialism brought us the 20th century, which is probably the most peaceful century the world has ever seen.
We're gonna play a fun game.
All things considered, nuclear bombs considered. But hold on a second. Let me finish up this little bit here. This professor says she's noticed how many factors that drove European Christian imperialism have been put to use in high-speed, high-tech forms. Rubenstein wonders if colonial practices like the exploitation of environmental resources and the destruction of landscapes, all in the name of ideals such as destiny, civilization, and salvation of humanity, will be part of man's expansion into space. Of course, we're reasonably sure that, especially in our own solar system, there is no life, not even microbes about which to worry. Hence, what's the big deal if we help save Earth by exploiting Mars? So the exploitation of these completely uninhabited areas. I mean, the environmentalists probably are also up in arms as well.
The one group that exploited the natural resources the most and led to the destruction of most species of both plant and animal life were the allegedly ecological loving Native Americans who are not native to America. So right. I just want to put that out there.
Well, they were talking about the the vegetarians, right, are saying, oh, we shouldn't kill all the animals, but the farmers talk about how, like, when I cultivate a field, I'm killing like thousands of animals in order to grow tofu for, you know, for the vegans, right?
Well,
It's because
okay.
it's the small animals, it's the birds, it's all that stuff gets ground up into the soil when the cultivator goes through.
Well, the gray wolf is the biggest example of this, right? Environmentalists love to protect the gray wolf to the point that now in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the gray wolf is doing significant economic damage to the farming community by just killing cows and pigs at will because the farmers can't fight back against the gray wolf. And that's a problem not just in Michigan. It's a problem in Idaho. It's a problem in Montana. It's a problem all over the place. A lot of those places now have managed hunts, but states like Michigan that are liberal refuse to have a managed hunt, and the wolves are just destroying farming. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
You know what? This brings me to a big one that actually I got into a pretty fun argument with, and it was the argumentative equivalent of getting into a small firefight when you know that the entire artillery section is paying direct attention just to your squad, right? My buddy, who is a customer at the shop and happens to be the main head of fisheries for the tribe here next to us, was standing next to me when we were having an argument with some rando about blowing up the dams on the lower Snake River to save the salmon. And are you aware that salmon populations are higher than they have ever been in recorded history? Are you aware that the only thing we could possibly do, according to our own science, in order to boost their levels higher would be to start hunting sea lions, whose levels are also higher than they've been in recorded history because we've stopped hunting them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same with the polar bear. They say the polar bear's environment is shrinking. Yet there are more polar bears alive now than there ever have been in the history of the world. So,
Huh.
I think I remember hearing somewhere that, and this was back in the 90s, so this is not a new phenomenon, right? That there are more white-tailed deer in the state of Kentucky now than were in the entire southeast United States at the time of the of the Revolutionary War or some period around that time. I mean,
particularly, I've heard that in the South they have a lot of those managed deer hunt farms too. You get crazy high population numbers there that you've never seen in the wild.
Let me attest just this morning that I can confirm that the Montana white-tailed deer populations are extremely elevated because I've been dodging them since 5 a.m.
Yeah. Let me personally attest that the Montana white-tailed deer population is far too damn high.
Yeah. So anyway, if Christian imperialists bring civilization to outer space, is that a bad thing? I don't think so. But ultimately, this goes back to just Marxism, right? And so you can tell from this right here. It says from a NASA DEI diversity, equity, and inclusion group, which had argued we must actively prevent capitalist extraction on other worlds. So, I mean, clearly this is a Marxist, and this is just Marxism from another point of view, right? Christianity is ultimately the antithesis of, Marxist dogma, right? For a variety of reasons, not just for the obvious, the opiate of the masses kind of thing. But, there's so much in Christianity that if you just kind of operationalize Christianity in the most kind of benign way, you set up successful societies. I think the last 1,000 years proves that.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say,
everyone keeps telling me I'm crazy when I say that they want to outlaw Christianity, and yet stories like this exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Final thoughts, guys, on this?
Yeah. I just I would be very interested to see about this professor's country of origin.
Well, with the blue hair, is it from Smurfland?
Zubrin.
Zubrin.
Zubrin. That's an interesting one.
Yes, in
Well, my
Zubrin,
final word.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. I was just
Okay.
going to make
In the last days. In the last days, you will hear of false teachers and false prophets, and here we are.
So.
Yeah.
Facts.
Good point from Joe as an exit on that topic. So let's move on to our next odds and ends. Erdogan calls for greater Islamic alliance to combat Israeli expansionism. So when Israel defends itself, it's expansionism because they're expanding into other parts of. Wait a second. Pause for a second, guys. Israel. They're expanding into parts of Israel, so specifically Gaza and the West Bank, right? Now, if they invaded southern Lebanon, you could make an argument that that's expansionistic. But then if they don't stay in southern Lebanon, then ultimately that's a fallacious argument as well. On Saturday, Turkish President Erdogan issued a blistering speech at an Islamic schools association event near Istanbul. Once again condemning Israel, but this time he ratcheted the rhetoric as the remarks came a day after a Turkish-American woman was shot during a protest by Israeli troops in the West Bank. Erdogan essentially called for an Islamic uprising against the Jewish state, saying that a Muslim alliance of countries and populations is needed against what he called the growing threat of expansionism from Israel. The only step that will stop Israeli arrogance, Israeli banditry, and Israeli state terrorism is the alliance of Islamic countries. So essentially, he's calling for a balancing coalition against Israel. And, of course, he doesn't come right out and say it, but and their American and European, kind of supporters.
How'd that work out during the 6 Days War?
I was just gonna say.
I mean, we have a pretty clear track record on how this has gone in the past.
But I'll say this: he's probably thinking, and I don't know, maybe we could call it a caliphate or something.
Yeah.
The guy sees himself as the caliph. So
very true. I'm curious when we're going to see him launch his campaign against Islamic extremism in his country to maybe root out the extremists trying to white bag and kidnap American soldiers off the street.
Well, they weren't trying to kidnap them per se. They were just trying to kind of assault.
I guarantee you, the Turkish intelligence agency had their hands all over that op.
Well, the problem is a lot was not shown on that video. That being said, ultimately those were a bunch of knuckleheads, and they were Erdogan's knuckleheads, right? That was a party that supports Erdogan directly. So
and they were following history, including the hood they put over him, which was reminiscent of the last time they did it, and successfully got away with kidnapping them and then beating them half to death.
Well, I mean, I think you're giving a bunch of hooligans a little more. You know more about it than they do, I think, honestly. But ultimately, the police were the ones. They were right there when it happened.
Well, Scott, us Marines tend to take when Marines get kidnapped and beaten kind of seriously.
I know. I got it. I'm just saying.
Although it would have been a squid this time, so I'd have taken it slightly less personally, but still personally.
Well, was the bald guy? Was he a corpsman?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he was a corpsman. He was a corpsman. So
I do know that the guys who jumped in were Army.
Were Marines. Were what?
The guys who jumped in, from what I read, were Army.
There were no Army people in that amphibious group.
It would have been Marines then, for sure.
Yeah, it was all Marines is what I heard. I heard the guy that got bagged was a corpsman, and there was about 4 or 5 Marines that were off camera that basically dogpiled on those guys. And evidently the police that were right down the street had to come down to basically save those Turkish men's lives from being beaten to death. And there's a reason why that video stops where it does, because they didn't want to make those guys look absolutely stupid. And the other thing too, in fairness, right? Izmir which is where that was at. That's where I lived for the last, for 9 months a year ago. That is a pretty pro-Western, pro-European city, though there are some outspoken Erdogan supporters there. Most of the people that live in Izmir are kind of the other side. They want, they're Kamalists, Kamal Ataturk, who is another, piece of work, if you ask me, but still, he's the one who wants to keep the secular, separation of church and state, in Turkey. So it's kind of an interesting internal conflict there that I'm glad I'm thousands of miles away from now.
Yeah.
Because I saw some hairy situations there, and I was smart enough to kind of slip away, keep my hat down,
So, if I may just ask a question, kind of an overall on this, it seems to me as though Erdogan is trying very hard, obviously, to as all leaders should, right, to benefit the position of his nation, and he seems to be doing so by hearkening back to and trying to stoke kind of the Islamists in his country and kind of an Islamo nationalism. And that's not reminiscent of any other time period at all, is it?
I mean, if the shoe fits, right?
Let's get Stan in here to answer that one.
Kind of going back here, Erdogan's threats against Israel have grown of late, sending Turkey's relations with Israel spiraling, with its trade embargoes on a list of export items to boot. In late July, Erdogan had threatened that his country could intervene militarily in Gaza to defend Palestinians against Israel. Let me know how that goes for you there, Turkey. Intervening directly into Israel. That's one of those kind of great stump speech that you never actually do. Yeah. He says, we need to be very strong so that Israel cannot do these ridiculous things to Palestine. Just as we entered Karbaka, we will enter. That's Libya. Just as we entered Libya, we can do something similar to them. Erdogan said in a speech during to his ruling Justice and Development Party. Now, I will say this.
Yes.
Hold on a second. I will say this. They've made a lot of kind of intimations that Greece, right? They've had recent problems with Greece over the last few years, right? And to the point where it almost looks like they may come to blows, right? Well, ultimately, the NATO thing kind of holds them back on that, and there's a lot of internal pressure against Erdogan to stifle that shit. There's no NATO pressure holding Erdogan back from acting against Israel. Watcher, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yes, well-known fact that Libya and Israel are highly equivalent militarily. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Exactly right.
Well, the other thing too is that Arian is a really good politician, and he's pretty good at reading international public opinion. At the time they entered Libya, there was serious international calling for someone to stop the killing, and he gave the strength to one side, right? That ended the killing faster. Sometimes, in order to end the killing, you got to kill a few more people, but also, he's reading the tea leaves right now and seeing like, hey, even in the United States, there's a lot of anti-Israel sentiment. Now is my time to push this issue, and I won't get a lot of pushback. And that's kind of what he's doing here.
Yeah. All right. Let's jump into our final odds and ends here. And I want to give a hat tip to our good old buddy Ron. He's the one who kind of shared this tidbit with us in our DM group. So how the Chinese Communist Party network operates, this, by the way, this is Dr. Lawrence Sellin. Both these are two tweets by him. So clearly, if you're interested in China, this guy is kind of on it. How the Chinese Communist Party network operates in New York City. The Chinese consulate establishes a de facto control of pro-CCP Chinese American organizations, which develop mutually beneficial relationships with Democrats, facilitating the CCP influenced espionage operations. So basically, you've got this was a picture here of the Chinese consulate of New York, and then you've got all these guys with Mayor Eric Adams. And they're all forget about the international politics. I'm your local neighborhood Chinese consulate. We're buddies here. We're here. Let's eat Chinese food in Chinatown, and we love America and all this kind of stuff, right? So this is those buddy kind of thing that then ends up being what they use to run their operations within the United States. Yeah. And so the next tweet kind of gets to what this.
While we're transitioning, I just have to say that Squishy Hunter, that's a fantastic one, but you got one of those wrong. It was first they came for the communists, and I said, please make sure you get all the communists.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let me help you. First, I came for the communists, more like, or first we came for the communists. So this is a Chinese American organization, right? These are the irony here is that Dr. Lawrence says, Dr. Sellin says, these are not Chinese Americans. They are Chinese in America. That even young Chinese who grew up in the U.S. are being indoctrinated to be loyal to the Chinese Communist Party by pro-CCP Chinese American groups. They marched to communist China patriotic songs, Ode to the Motherland. So, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I really think this should not be protected speech in the U.S.
I'm going to disagree. Protected speech.
I don't know.
All speech should be protected speech.
But here's the thing: if the Chinese Communist Party, if any dollar comes to America from the Chi-Coms to pay for this kind of an event, then I think that's, if you can establish that connection, then it becomes an information operation against America versus actual speech.
Wait until you hear about the Voice of America and USAID.
Oh, I think both of those should be. I think they should be done away with. I don't think we have any business. I think Stars and Stripes should go away too. I think AFN for the most part should go away outside of its public affairs capabilities that they give to the theaters. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
So you're saying that the military government should be the only ones allowed to broadcast?
No, what are you talking about?
Other way around.
You said no. He said AFN. Other than in the theaters where they're needed, AFN should be the only place AFN should operate. So the military propaganda should be the only authorized use of the Armed Forces Network.
AFN only broadcasts overseas.
I know.
Right.
We're talking past each other on this one. You're missing my point. I'm missing yours. So we'll just move on.
Anyway,
I'm not in favor of limiting free speech. I'm just going to say it.
I know, but do you see a difference between a hostile nation information operation in America and free speech? You see a difference?
No, because we do the same thing all around the world. Yeah, but it's just what nation states do.
I got it.
I think you need to be very careful about who gets.
But this is where we start shouting Russia, 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 and China, China, China.
Exactly.
And we start undermining.
I agree with that.
Well, well, you can't have it both ways.
Well, no. It's a slippery slope, and I think it's one of those kind of things you got to figure it out. You got to tread very carefully, right? Because it's like if I want to say pro-China things or pro-Russia things because I am pro, that's your individual right as a citizen, right? But if the Chinese government is paying for it or the Russian government is paying for it to give a pro-Russia, pro-China slant inside the United States, that's different, no?
We do the exact same thing.
I know, because we're doing foreign operations. We also drop bombs on other countries.
Oh, so it's good for us, but not for them. Okay. Weird.
Well, that's like saying don't drop bombs on us, but we can drop bombs on you. No, I mean, it's a war. It's an information. There's an information war going on 24/7. I'm just saying we should do everything we can to limit external actors' ability to kind of corrupt the minds of Americans. That's all I'm saying.
Good luck with that. Good luck.
I know it's tough. It's a tough thing to do, right? But then again, I've fought that battle in that arena for the last 15 years, so I'm pretty familiar with it. I'm familiar with the problems with it. Anyway, the point is that clearly this stuff is happening, and it goes. We've talked about in the past, guys, the secret police stations, right, within the U.S. and other countries. Canada's riddled with them. The U.S. started shutting some of them down, but ultimately, I don't think that they've all been shut down.
Let me preface what I'm about to say with Chinese secret police stations are bad. But who is the legal attaché at every United States embassy around the world? Who fills that role?
The legal attaché? What do you mean?
Yep. The legat at every U.S. embassy. Who do they work for? What agency? The Federal
FBI?
Bureau of Investigation. Yes. And his assistant is always the United States Marshal. So by calling them the legal attaché instead of the FBI and the United States Marshal, we also operate secret police stations around the world.
But are they secret? They're just police, right?
They're called the legal attaché. They're not called the FBI or the U.S. Marshal.
I don't think you even need to go that far. I mean, can we talk about the NYPD offices in the Middle East?
Correct. The NYPD has an international intelligence agency all over the world. So I know Chinese police stations, bad. But we also have to say, but we get it because we do it too.
No, and I think probably the best, Joe, I love that you're doing this because I agree with you. We need to be out of this business entirely. This business
we do, and we need to put them out of business. Yep.
Correct, ma'am. But I want to point something out. We've had this thing for a long time where we used to understand, and like I've heard old military leaders talk about this, where we understood that you have to set the example even for your enemies in combat, and that there are some times that you have to go low in order to force them to go to give up some of the bad things that they're doing. However, that you can't ever ask somebody to stop doing something that you're actively doing, right?
Well,
it's,
I think
we
it's
need
less.
to not only that, but I honestly, I really believe that a culture in which we said, hey, let's figure out the very best way to institute regime change in other countries, there is something in that thought process that very subtly, over years, allowed it to be shifted and then turned directly on the American people. And my opinion is that if we just outright say, that's not a business we're ever going to be in again, doesn't matter what the consequences are, fuck that, we're not doing this regime change bullshit, that inspires a certain ethos that also transitions to domestic politics.
And I'll agree that the Chinese secret police stations do far more insidious things than our legal attachés do. But what I'm saying is that as we get on our high horse about this, China's going to say, okay, then we're kicking out all of your legal attachés and their deputy legats. And so there we go. Meanwhile, we also would have to kick out the RSO, who's a State Department agent.
By the way, I was really curious how they sold this to other countries, and so I did some digging. And the way that they sold this to like all these Eastern European countries that are letting in these Chinese police stations, and like just officially allowing them, is, hey, Chinese people come here, they spend a lot of money, and they're very rude, and they don't act right. So we're going to have these Chinese police stations here in country to police our own people, since they're afraid of us, but they're not afraid of your police.
Well, you know, the irony is that, you know, when countries break our laws, right, then we should enforce those laws. But unfortunately, we don't do that, right? I mean, we don't even enforce our own laws on our own citizens half the time. And, you know, it doesn't help that essentially neo-Marxists have taken over the U.S. political system and a lot of its, you know, functions, you know, as well. So, I mean, it's kind of like a sticky situation, right? No, that's what I call a sticky situation.
It's a sticky wicket.
Well, but you know, that's one of those kind of things. You can't just be thinking about like, you know, one step, right? You got to be thinking like 5 steps down the road, right? Yeah, we may need to propagandize other countries, but at the same time, that doesn't mean we put up with it in our own country. We may need to use legal attaches overseas, but that doesn't mean we allow, you know, Chinese American, you know, American citizens of Chinese descent to be subjugated by the CCP inside the U.S., which is documented to happen. I mean, Joe, you know, you've told me about this stuff before.
Well, no, I'm not saying that what they're doing is right, but what I'm saying is that we don't have the moral high ground on any of these issues. Yeah. That we claim, well, we should be allowed to do it, but literally no one else should ever be able to. Yeah. If no one's going to do it, it's better for everyone.
Agreed. And that creates the precedent that is the expected behavior.
All right. So I think this is a good discussion of this. I mean, this is one of those kind of things we're going off of 2 tweets, so it's not what you'd call an in-depth thing, but these kind of discussions I think are important. And if you're not aware of these events occurring within the U.S., then it's kind of hard to have the discussion in the first place. So.
Right on.
Speaking of places where it's hard to have a discussion. Sorry, we got to get it.
Well, no. Actually, we've already kind of hit the tactical-wisdom.com pit earlier on in the show with all those courses going on. Joe, anything else tactical-wisdom that you want to get out there right now?
Well, there's an article out there I wrote over the weekend about being realistic about what your radios can do for you. And Matt put out a tweet yesterday about the NATO reporting all these Russian probes near the undersea cables. Might be a good time to learn a thing or two about radio. Yeah. So go check out that article, and maybe check out a couple of classes that are being offered out there. So that's really about it.
Well said. Yeah, that was interesting, talking about the undersea cables. That's something that most people are just not even tracking.
Or we're about to do it ourselves and we're going to blame Russia for it. Make no mistake, there are powers on the left that will literally plunge this country into darkness to stay in power. And the internet has become inconvenient because it enables the truth to leak out.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying things are looking pretty bad all the way around. I do want to use the balance of my time to say one thing, though, that I forgot to say earlier. I want to give a big shout out to Stan's wife. She came by yesterday to reassure mine that she had allies in the area, but she bought us a cake she made, and it was absolutely fantastic.
That's awesome.
So Mrs. Stan, thank you for the cake. It was absolutely delicious, and I even have a little bit with me on the road right now. So. Anyway, cool stuff.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's nice to have neighbors like that. That you know you have your back. So very cool. All right, let's jump into our next one here. So we're talking a little bit about Brazil. We had talked about the Darth Vader like judge who has been who's basically decided that he's going to take his all his poor life decisions out on Elon Musk and X. And so that kind of saga has started to kind of ripple within, the word on the street. And I don't know, Joe, if you've talked to Costa or any of our other kind of buddies in Brazil lately, but what they're saying is that like everybody used X. Like it wasn't just like the right wing, or it was the left wing too, because that's where they could get like up to date international news, up to the minute, instead of through the kind of filters of, well, AP hears about it, then AP writes a story 6 hours later type of deal, or Google News, right? Google News is classically like basically a day behind the news. Have you heard anything?
So not wanting to land any of our Brazilian associates in jail. Yeah. Let me say that the reason why none of them are on the show today to talk about it is because it would land them in jail.
Right.
And this goes directly to what I was just talking about. When an extreme left-wing government feels like they're going to lose control and lose power because they had a whole bunch of protests and a surging populace, the first thing they do is cut off your access to information. One of the problems they're having now is trying to get radios out to everyone so that they can still communicate and organize, because X was how they were doing it.
Yeah.
They had already shut down WhatsApp before that. Now X is shut down. And in radios, you might not know this, but in lots of other parts of the world, radio is significantly restricted. It's harder to get radios than it is in America. And so it has really limited the ability of either side to organize and communicate and get news. And now the only source for official news is the government-run news reports at night. That's a dangerous place to be in. And what you need to take away from Brazil is not just the tragedy for the folks who live there right now, but that's the glide path you are on right now. Make no mistake about it. That's where you're headed. And you need to be watching what happens in Brazil very, very closely. Pray for those people and the good folks who are resisting, because they are there. And we won't name names, but we know some. So
yeah,
I wish them the best.
Yeah, that's really the sad thing. The worst thing about tyranny is when people who are under the kind of the thumb of tyranny, and they are literally out of communicado because of things that are happening in the world, and it's not they just don't deserve it. These are all good people, and the innocent go down with the guilty in these situations.
Well, and let me say too that if you follow Costa on X, and now it's unavailable in their area, Function Art Costa on Facebook might be someone you know.
Yes.
So I would take a look there.
Yeah. All right. So for the Costa fans out there, that's a way to continue to see what he's going on.
For you ladies, let's just be honest. For you ladies.
I know. The ladies love Costa, let's be honest. Bolsonaro leads massive free speech protest in Brazil after Supreme Court bans X. Thousands of Brazilians flooded the street on Saturday to protest against the government's censorship crusade against Elon Musk.
There was a Brazilian of them out there.
A Brazilian. Against Elon Musk's free speech X platform. The demonstration held on Saturday on Independence Day was led by former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, who said in response to the Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes, I hope that the federal Senate puts the brakes on the de Moraes, this dictator who does more harm to Brazil than Lula himself. And it's a pretty big rally here. I mean, it's probably tens of thousands is what I would say here.
Let's talk about this. They had a right-wing populist president who then lost a sketchy election, and then they tried to put him in jail with some very sketchy convictions, and then they limited free speech afterward, and he's still trying to fight the fight. Does any of this sound familiar at all?
Yes, it does. In fact,
Okay.
it's
All right.
very familiar.
Speaking of things that sound familiar, I know that the thing is muted on stream so that we don't get bad echoes, but in case you were wondering, hey, do the Brazilians still have those crazy weird ass horns that they had from the from when they hosted the games in their country? Yes, they do.
Those came from Africa. The Zuzu,
the vuvuzelas, yeah, and they've
vuvuzelas.
still got them. Oh boy!
I think that's a Southern Hemisphere soccer thing. It's let's see. Here's a piece from a little bit from Schellenberger on the situation. Brazilian President Lula and Supreme Court Justice de Morales says that they must block X to protect Brazil's independence. Well, that's interesting. X is a platform for dangerous, false, and hateful words. They say
some might say they're defending their democracy.
That's right. We can't have that, Joe. Democracy is a bad thing when you live in Brazil, I guess. Many of those words violate Brazil's laws and constitution, but their censorship goes far beyond what Brazil's constitution allows. The government demanded that X and other social media networks censor and ban individual people, including journalists and politicians. Such bans are immoral, illegal, and unconstitutional. They constitute election interference and are undermining democracy by preventing candidates from getting the word out. Shocking.
I just want to say, as a brief little aside here, that there was a certain Greenwald journalist who made comments about moving to Brazil because he felt that Brazil was better able to defend free speech than America, and
that was Michael.
Ask how that's working out for you, Glenn? No, it was Glenn.
Glenn Greenwald. Yeah, that's right. I remember that. Yeah. That's. I know that Schellenberger's been down there for a little bit now, and so it doesn't surprise me that he's reporting from this. There he is wearing a Colorado T-shirt in the middle of this whole thing. Go figure. All right, let me get to the next one here. So in a post X ban, beware the Brazilian model of institutional mistrust, right? And so how do things happen after you start banning free speech, right? You're basically creating a pervasive mistrust of everything. Specifically official institutions. I went on to the next story. As democracies grapple with misinformation, Brazil's hardline approach is seen by some as a potential model. This country has taken, basically they're saying China, the CCP model is where they want to go. The country has taken extreme measures to police online discourse and banning X and fining citizens for using VPNs to access this. These moves highlight its boldness, but also underscore the dangers of empowering the state to mistreat merely a crisis of information. Mistrust, a crisis of information. Brazil's crisis of institutional mistrust can be traced back to the car wash operation, a sweeping corruption investigation that began in 2014. The car wash revealed deep entanglements of bribery within the highest echelon of government during the Lula administration in the early 2000s. The judiciary, seen as the last bastion of integrity, gained an unprecedented public trust, with the judges and prosecutors becoming national heroes. However, as car wash extended its reach, the judiciary itself came under scrutiny. In 2019, the magazine Caruso published allegations implicating the Supreme Court in the very corruption schemes that Kawash aimed to dismantle. TOEFL's response to launching an investigation against the magazine for allegedly spreading fake news marked the beginning of a dangerous conflation of misinformation and dissent. Initially, the press described this move as censorship. However, as concerns about misinformation grew, Morales began targeting supporters of Bolsonaro, who were increasingly skeptical of Brazilian democracy. The judiciary was now positioning itself not just as an arbiter of law, but as the arbiter of truth. So this is the danger, right? This is where, Ministry of Truth becomes literally the 1984,
it's about the control of language, right?
Right.
When you use the word misinformation and disinformation, everyone agrees that these are bad. And you could get everyone behind limiting misinformation and disinformation. The trouble comes when you say, okay, we all agree that this is bad, but what is it? And then no one can define what it is. And are opinions misinformation and disinformation, or are they opinions? And more often than not, what they label as disinformation or misinformation is an opinion. And that's the slippery slope and very easy to go down.
100%. Okay. Sorry, Watcher. The next story we're gonna have to cut. That I don't know how that got in there. That is. But the I guess this just comes back to the whole idea of going back to 1984 is a great kind of Bible for, am I living in a tyranny or not? When you start seeing anything that looks like it's coming out of 1984, then the answer is yes. Tyranny is here, right?
Like as an example, I can say this example because I don't live there. In Michigan, when it was made a crime to imply or state that there were irregularities with the 2020 election.
Yeah.
That's going down the 1984 path.
Yeah. Right. It is helpful and instructive to understand how the author of 1984 got to where he was. For you see, right up until he wrote that, he was a avowed socialist.
Yes.
And understood exactly where his own party was going.
Well, the other thing is too is like idealism is great until you start enacting it, right? And then all of a sudden you start seeing the compromises that must be made. And this is the reason why the idealists go up against the wall first after the the new regime takes power, after the revolution's over, right?
This is why there are so many warnings about immanitizing the escutcheon. Yes. But,
you want to say more about that?
No. Just I've got some great memes on it if you want.
All right, let me come back to the initially the press decried this move as censorship. The judiciary was now positioning itself. Sorry, I just said that Morales' approach has been defined by his willingness to bypass due process in the name of combating misinformation and anti-democratic opinions. These actions were often carried out with minimal transparency and no avenue for appeal. For instance, he froze the assets of Twitter's former legal representative and extended this to Starlink, a move widely criticized as a violation of Brazilian corporate law. And then when they basically said, hey, you have to do something, ultimately they couldn't do it because they couldn't send a legal representative to the court because he was basically fining the legal representative for, in order to anyway. So yeah, it's rough, man. Mistrust is not misinformation, but it's often its cause. Yeah. Only a culture of open dialogue and collective problem solving can help democracies build more resilient and trustworthy public sphere. So we're not going to do that story. That's the Haitians and 20,000 Haitians in an Ohio. I think it was an Ohio city.
Well, then the story must be fake then.
Well, I was going to say because Ohio's not a real place.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on. All right.
Hold on before we do.
Hey, Joe, you got any other thoughts on Brazil?
You know what? It's a place near and dear to my heart. I hope that they can figure it out, but they need to understand that there is actually only one solution to this, and they need to get cracking.
Yeah, what I don't understand is when regular people just allow themselves to be trampled, especially people with the ability.
It's the 8th largest economy in the world. So a lot of people, when they think Brazil, they think of some sort of a backwards third world country. Brazil is very much a first world country. Life is comfortable there. So yeah, they might be stomping on my rights and freedoms, but the TV comes on most of the time. If I don't live in the favelas, everything is good.
Yeah.
So until that starts to change, you won't see much progress.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those kind of things when, if you can go to work and come home and watch your TV shows on Netflix, then do you even see it happening, right?
Right.
Maybe there's a little more police in the streets, or maybe there's a protest that you have to drive around, but your navigation app will route you around it, and so you miss the whole thing. So yeah, it's a kind of a, I don't know. It's creepy. All right. The second topic on the show today is the Kamala Show Part 2. This is interesting right here. This is something I was not on my bingo card, right? And that is professors rallying academics around less bad candidate Trump. University professors have started a petition for academics to rally behind Donald Trump in the 2024 presidential election. The petition statement, a project of Professor Daniel Klein from George Mason University, encourages scholars to support the Republican candidate. As of Thursday, it had 51 professors had signed it. The list so far represents a mix of emeritus and current scholars from both private and public universities, including well-known institutions and state schools. Titled "The Lesser Evil," it emphasizes the founding principle of individual liberty while decrying big government, and affirms the Declaration of Independence, exaltation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as the chief aims of good government. According to Klein, Republicans are more predisposed to oppose stark centralization, hence this support of what he deems the lesser evil. Republican presidential candidate, except for a few odd places and a few odd units on a few campuses, academia is a leftist apparatus. Academia continues to get worse. This is absolutely true. He says less than 10% of professors think R is better than D. This doesn't surprise me. This is one of the things that James Lindsay was always kind of pointing out was the Jordan Peterson and there were several kind of incidents. Brett Weinstein, his brother is, what's his brother's name? The other Weinstein brother. Brett Weinstein.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Anyway, the other one was another leftist professor that got turned on during the 2016 kind of time frame at Evergreen University. That's what it was. And so you've seen a lot of these kind of old school hippie liberal, they're kind of the bottom lower, right? The non-authoritarian leftists are, which are basically non-existent anymore. They kind of come from that hippie generation, right? Are like getting pushed back on.
That's it. It's Eric
Weinstein. Yeah. Hey, it's whatever. He's not the worst guy in the world, but he's kind of oh man, he is insufferable.
I'm with Caravaggio. Look, man, Caravaggio on this. Look, I'm sorry. Like, I get it. I get that people are happy to have people from the opposite side acknowledge that you're correct. I get it. But if you look at everything the man has done since he came out, it's very clear he doesn't think the leftists are wrong. He just thinks the classic thing that all leftists think, which is, oh, they're just going about it the wrong way. If we just had better people in charge of this absolute horrific monster machine, it would do good things.
Right. Exactly right. Yeah, and of these two, we would just rather have this guy for the next 4 years, and then we can get a good leftist in there. I absolutely agree. But ultimately, the ones that I can understand and actually, sympathize with more directly are the ones that say, hey, listen, whether I agree with you or disagree with you, if my neighbor, I have to live with you, right? And I don't hate my neighbor per se. I can disagree with them, but I don't have to necessarily hate them. And if that's the case, then I can understand that. But if they don't come up, but it kind of goes back to the law enforcement guys we were talking about earlier. If they say, if they keep their head buried in the sand and just go along with, the tyranny, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you want to try to get along with your neighbor. If you continue to pull the lever for the left, for the Democrats, in this case, the Kamala Harris ticket, then it doesn't matter. But if you're willing to actually support the other side and come out and say, then I get it. Now, the next story is kind of interesting because it's the same type of thing, right? It's a leftist supporting Trump, but the irony is the motivation is completely different in this case, I think. So this is our favorite.
I think that in America,
go ahead.
In America, we're well beyond the. He's still my neighbor and I have to live with him. I think that we crossed that Rubicon a long time ago. I don't think there's many people who feel that way anymore.
I think on the left. Yeah. I think statistically you're mostly correct. I mean, there's always the outliers, right? That are, ultimately the ones that Militant Roots is pointing out that Brett did a good job of explaining the vax issue. Yeah, so just because you agree with him on 20% of the issues doesn't mean you agree with him, right? He may be 20% right, but that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean that, I support the guy.
Yeah,
generally.
I also despair of someone who is supposedly so well educated and so up on political science, whose solution for what really needed to be done to save America was create a third fucking party. Like,
yeah, I'm
so done with that.
It wasn't even a third party. It was a unity ticket. He wanted to put Tulsi Gabbard and Eye Patch McCain on a ticket, right? That's who he wanted.
Yep. It's shocking to me, some of these people who are supposedly titans of intellect, who when you look at what they're actually proposing, you kind of realize, no, they're midwits with expanded vocabulary, with far overly expanded vocabularies.
Well, I get the feeling that when they get outside of their very kind of, well, I guess it's not narrow, but it's when they get outside of their areas of expertise, all their sense making kind of instincts don't work, because they're looking for hardened, like especially science people who start looking at the squishy world of political science. It doesn't make sense because there's so many grades of gray in between, two sides of an issue, that they don't know they want something to be nice, kind of black and white,
Yeah, I'll be honest. There's the other side of that, right? We're going to talk about squishy versus facts. If I'm not mistaken, Brent Weinstein is the biologist who wants us to honor and accept trans identities.
I don't know anything about that. I don't pay attention to him. I don't give guys like him the time of day.
No, and that's kind of what I'm saying, though, is in the realm of, we have 51 professors that are signing on to a letter that says that they think Trump is the lesser of two evils. I'm just saying, hey guys, let's stop looking. Academia is not going to fix itself. It's not. I think we stop looking. Part of fixing it is stopping looking to them as being a source of, like the thought of this is, hey, these are professors, these are big names in their field, and these are obviously leftists, and so it's a big deal that they're coming over to our side. And my thing is, no, I don't think it is a big deal. No, I really don't think it is. I think that we just stop paying attention to these people entirely.
One of the things that I think is that ultimately, to the extent that they can be tools to get other people that may respect them to vote the way you want them to vote, okay, I can see using them that, but their usefulness in that kind of sense ends after the day after the election, right? If they deliver 100 votes or whatever, then great. That is a purpose for having that person. It's like that's the reason why Tucker Carlson giving Tulsi Gabbard time is worthwhile, right? It's not because she is a worthwhile person. I mean, she's essentially a 1995. She's a Bill Clinton Democrat who is upset that nobody in the Democratic Party wants to listen to her anymore. Yeah. And because of that, she can now come over to the Republican Party, which is not the Republican Party of 1994. And she is, she's making inroads. And so to the extent that you can get her supporters to vote for Donald Trump, great. But as soon as that's over with, she should be cast aside. But that's what I'm worried about, is people feel like, oh, well, I gotta continue to listen to her after the election because I owe her something. No, she's a leftist. You don't have to owe. Yeah. You don't owe her anything.
Exactly. Before we move on to the next thing, there's two things I want to address in chat. First of all, Pinish's Helicopters Tour is calling for a final solution for the academia question. And I just want to say, in response to that I feel that academics are, they're necessary. We need them. I just think that they should probably be treated like thespians and journalists, and that it should be a well-known law that they can't be inside city limits after dark.
Well, my feeling is that if you teach Marxist praxis on the government dime, that you should be, your speech should be.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And the second thing is, Stoli says, I want to meet the people who respect Brett. Those seem like the kind of people I'd like to bully Frank Castle style. Agreed. They're
the people who drive EVs and smell them.
Yeah, I was to say, find a Prius. You're halfway there.
Right. Yeah, come on. Prius is like so.
Speaking of Tulsi.
Ago. Yes. So Tulsi Gabbard destroys Cheney endorsement. So let me be honest with you. She is what's called a useful idiot, right? And Tulsi has carried quite a bit of water for Donald Trump in the last year or so. And it's been interesting to see her do this, because when it comes to certain types of arguments, specifically the Cheney argument is a good example of one, because she was always on the other side of Cheney, right? Because she was a Democrat back when Cheney was the big bad guy, right? So she can say, I always hated Cheney, when many of the Republicans that are in Congress right now were buddy with Cheney for so long, right?
Yeah, no, it's hilarious to me to see them cozy up to a figure that leftists have essentially been calling the devil incarnate.
The devil incarnate. It's like this guy's literally the emperor, and now he's like one of And here's the funny thing about this Cheney endorsement. I haven't seen anybody big say this, but I've seen several kind of left-wing influencers kind of say, "Wait a second, if Cheney is endorsing Harris, I got to rethink this." Right? And that's,
man, if Cheney was endorsing Trump, I'd have to rethink it.
I know, right? The point is if Cheney is endorsing people, then that's a cause to rethink the entire thing. Tucker Carlson's live tour show in Colorado Springs, Colorado on Saturday featured Tulsi Gabbard amongst many of his guests. The former Democratic rep turned Republican / conservative commentator is a Army Reserve officer. Is she a Republican now officially? Has she, or is she an independent? I think she's an independent now.
Yeah.
And has for years been outspoken in condemning the Washington national security state's lust for war, even as common Americans suffer the effects at home of spending billions in foreign adventurism and failed nation building abroad. The great thing about the timing of her appearance on Tucker Carlson's show is that she took the stage just after Dick Cheney and his daughter Liz, both lifelong Republicans, issued full-throated endorsements of Kamala Harris for president, who also blasted depraved human being Donald Trump. The 83-year-old former Vice President Cheney, who oversaw the George Bush, the G.W. Bush invasion of Iraq and the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, said in his Saturday statement, in our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual with greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. The fact that he's saying that Donald Trump is the greatest threat to the republic, there's never been a greater threat to the military-industrial complex, I think.
Well, that's his republic.
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's kind of the point of that. And the Halliburton industrial complex, the financial services industrial complex. Gabbard blasted the endorsement and said the fact that Harris said that she was honored and proud to receive it from Cheney by pointing out that he was the architect of 2 decades of failed wars. And the irony would be if Harris would actually say, I appreciate anybody's endorsement. That being said, I don't like Dick Cheney. If she had come out, that would have been the smart thing for her to do. To absolutely give him the Heisman, right? It's like, hey.
Instead, they're crowing about it.
I know they're absolutely because they're basic. Because he was always on their side. They were always on the same side together. This is that whole kind of uniparty.
Well, it's just hilarious to me because I've been trying to point this out to multiple leftists who claim to want the same things for a very long time, that the uniparty exists in both parties, and that now it's very interesting that Trump has beaten the log long and hard enough that they've all come crawling out of the woodworks and have decided that it's the uniparty is only now a single party, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, and the irony too is that there is a radical left-wing element of the Democratic Party that is not in tune with the uniparty, and that's the interesting kind of thing. When will that wing, that kind of radical, communist,
I hate to say it,
split away from the big business, kind of Washington Amoeba Party, which is different. Let's be honest, the Washington Amoeba people are not communists. They are absolutely full-throated.
No, but they are using the communists.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. That's what I'm saying. When do we see that split away from the amoeba? Right? That would be interesting to see.
Well, the sad truth on that, Scott, is that we know that the communist element in that is really dumb because. Well, because they're communists.
Well, right. They aren't. They aren't smart.
I think the uniparty will get away with tricking them for quite a long time yet.
And that's what brings the uniparty essentially into, because fascists were always way smarter than communists, right? Because fascists are smart enough to use the tools of capitalism against a free society. And that's what the CCP is doing. The CCP is
what was
doing
it
that.
Stalin said? It will be a capitalist who sells us the rope with which we hang them.
Yeah, 100%. Let's play this video here and see what old Tulsi has to say on the Tucker Carlson show.
Voting for in this election, Dick Cheney has just made the choice very clear. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, the architect of everything that has gone wrong in the Middle East for the last few decades. Be sure about who.
That's a pretty big crowd he's got there. It sounds like a pretty big crowd, at least.
Hey, yeah, real quick. I know that this is a little bit behind and we're bringing up the last topic. Yeah, you're right. He has made it clear that he believes there are only 2 biological sexes. He just also makes it very clear that if somebody who is of one sex says they want to be of the other sex, you, out of politeness, should be forced to acknowledge them as though they were.
I see. The only problem is I haven't listened to Brett Weinstein since COVID, right? Because he was pretty... He was one of the few people that was spot on during COVID. And during COVID,
I wish I could have said the same thing. I wish I could have said the same thing. because I wish I could stop listening to both of them, but good God, do people keep giving them airtime?
I know. I just don't listen to it. I choose who I listen to, and I mean, I may see a clip from now and then, but that's a clip is not listening to people. All right. Let me kind of finish up her. Let's see. Harris's response to Dick Cheney announcement today. This is a continued quote from her. Announcement today was that she was so honored to have his endorsement, and we got military veterans in the House. It got a lot of you who probably served in the Middle East like I did. It's so sick. It is sickening to me. Gabbard continued Tucker to read those words today from Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, and Kamala Harris, because we have people who care very much about who were killed in those wars because of Dick Cheney. Kamala Harris has told us we need all we need to know about what kind of commander-in-chief she would be. And I don't know about you, but I would not trust her for a moment with the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform. I absolutely won't make a comment on that.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was gonna try and say something clever about Dick's hunting buddy, but we'll just let all that hang in the air.
So at the bottom of this story is the full length of her appearance on that live show. If you're interested, I won't be listening to it because I just don't have time.
It was pretty decent. I turned it on when I was doing something else the other day. I got about a third of the way in.
The only reason I would listen to something like that is because I trust Tucker to ask her question, to challenge her when she says things, right?
Well, you would be disappointed then. The live show format does seem to be him teeing her up for an introduction and then him letting her talk for an hour.
Okay, yeah. Then in that case, that wouldn't be of interest to me. But, it's one of those kind of things that, if you can use her to bring people over to vote for Trump, then, hey, man, I think that's you use her, right? And then when it's done, you stop using her. Okay, so this is the final one that I want to talk about today for our shortest show ever.
A series of things happened. But none of it is anyone's fault.
The Harris campaign has no time to think about why certain things have happened in the past 4 years. The Harris campaign declared Thursday that they don't have time to think about why the economy is the way it is right now, with high inflation and poor job numbers. Harris Waltz spokesman Ian Sam said, "Okay, yeah, can you play this? How long is this?"
Sure, I just have to say, I have no time to think about what this thing around my neck is, says man in news.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, 2 minutes. Okay, I think we can listen to that.
Hold on, yeah, let's full screen it and then
table.
But she's been part of the Biden administration. I mean, she has been part of the Democrats have been control of the country for the last 3 going on 4 years. And you are still seeing this in the polling. I mean, these working class voters are telling us right now that more of them are with Donald Trump than Kamala Harris. Why? What is it about what you guys have been doing for the last 3+ years that explains that?
Well, I think, again, we're trying to talk to the voters and explain this message. We've got 60 days until the election. We don't have time to sit around and think about why over the last few years certain things may have happened or may not have happened. We've got to go win an election. And the vice president's doing that by talking about her economic vision. And it's really different. It's really different. It's a new way forward, not only for the Democratic Party, but for
it's
the
really
country.
different. Okay, can you tell me what is really different? I got the capital gains rate, but what else on the list makes it really different from what was going on the past few years?
Sure, she wants to take into effect the first national law to take on corporate price gouging. She's talking about holding bad corporate actors accountable for their role in taking up prices on people at the grocery store, at the gas pump, all across this country. There are distinctions here in this candidate's message that she is sharing with the country every single day, and she's out there on the trail doing it while Donald Trump's talking about trickle-down economics. And
interestingly, one of the issues that they appear to be having is that, yeah, she's throwing out policies, but then everybody comes out and criticizes them, and they immediately back up and say that's not what they meant. So maybe that's why nobody knows what her policies are.
Yeah, exactly right. No audio.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to prevent the echo.
Country every single day, and she's out there on the trail doing it while Donald Trump's talking about trickle-down economics. And so, I understand the pundit class wants to sit around and maybe have these conversations, but at the end of the day, this is a campaign, and we're running to win, and she's running to win, and she's talking about the economy almost every single day on the campaign trail, and her plans to lower costs, whether it's in housing or groceries, her plans to give small businesses the tax incentives they need to start and the resources they need to just get off the ground.
The tax incentives. You're talking about a 50% unrealized capital gains tax. Are you fucking kidding me? You're talking about literally, hey, I'm going to build a business for 20 years and the government is now entitled to half of it. Yeah, that's totally the incentives that a small business needs to start, isn't it? God, I fucking hate these goddamn weasels.
Tell us how you really feel, Watcher.
Oh, death to communists.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. There's no time for actual substances trying to collect the roll call of failures. Yeah.
Well, look, man, I get it. They literally have absolutely nothing to campaign on. Their only thing to campaign on is and it's sad because we said this 6 months ago, but legitimately their only thing to campaign on is we're not the orange man.
Yeah, orange man bad, and we ain't him.
The amount of people that argument is working on has drastically lowered my respect for humanity.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know what.
Well, we should. We don't have a lot of time now, but the logical question is: so what are they going to do about it? Because they're not going to let him back in the White House. And
Well, the irony is that the polling, the polling machine to show how bad Trump is has already started failing in its effort. He's already started to either be dead even in places in battleground states or well ahead in many other places where just weeks ago he was down by 3 points. So the polls are already starting to completely roll back to where they were 6 months ago, prior to the assassination.
Which is so odd to me because that they have been juicing polls for as long as they can. What about now is the moment at which they peel back the veil and suddenly can't hide it anymore?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always been a lie, right? It's just one of those kind of things. You just want to scratch your head and be like, I don't understand why.
Well, no, like legitimately, why they've always been lying about the poll numbers. They've lied about the poll numbers for years. Why are they not doing it now? Why are we not hearing that Kamala is 63% likely to win?
Well, I mean,
I don't have an answer for that, but it's one of the questions that is repeatedly running through my mind every time I hear the news these days.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I mean, we're not going to solve it today, but ultimately, this is going to be one of those kind of things that keeps that we'll be talking about next week when we come back with the show on Monday. I feel bad about this, but we said at the beginning of the show. But ultimately, we're going to be putting the show on hiatus for the rest of the week. Got some stuff to do, got some personal stuff to take care of. And so
we could tell some people some of it because
Friday.
we could tell people at least a tiny bit of it because some of this is you guys. Hey, if you're backers of either of the campaigns, expect a lot of work to get done on those campaigns over the next week.
That's right. A lot of you guys have probably backed to either Doorkickers and or Landed Sea, and that's kind of some of the stuff we're going to get knocked out. But I've got some other stuff going on in my kind of world over here that I've got to take care of in the personal realm. So it's stressful, and I just want to kind of get some of that stuff behind me. This next month will be a kind of pretty pivotal for me. So hopefully by the show will come back and we'll finish through September, and then going into October, I'll have hopefully a big load off my shoulders at that point. So, any visa news yet? I don't know. What is that?
I think that my brain goes to a certain South African who.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I have not heard anything about that yet.
All I have heard is that they found a way. That was the last I heard. I didn't hear what it was. I heard that he is coming. So.
Oh, very cool. All right, guys, that's all we have for the show today, though. Can you recommend somebody else to watch? Let's see. I'll be honest with you. It's hard to recommend anybody in that does what we do, because nobody else talks about.
Nobody does what we do.
Shit we talk about.
Yeah.
I would say there's a lot of good. I would say, what is it? China. What is it?
China Uncensored. If you want to follow China,
good.
That's good. They're a good source for that. Middle East, I don't know, man. You're kind of boned. It's mostly Twitter accounts that I follow.
Yeah, X is the place to go for stuff. We've been talking a lot about Ukraine lately, so there's a lot of good news.
If you want just like a facsimile of unhinged, crazy ranting from the Watcher side, you could always go just check out Sam Hyde's podcast. I think it's called Aw Geez Dude or something like that.
He's coming up there. All right, guys. The China show are okay. They're kind of gone off the rails. Yeah, I haven't really paid attention to them.
Yeah.
For the last.
I will say the following. I think the China show is really good when they're able to talk about personal experience that they had when they were over there. I think, however, that the personal experience they had when they were over there has led them to be less reliable in some ways for news interpretation. They kind of seem to have an axe to grind, and while I understand and appreciate that, it comes across and makes it feel biased whether it is or not.
Well, right. So the other thing too, they have a lot of anti-CCP sources that they're able to get information that most people aren't seeing. And
yeah,
so
that's true as well.
So I mean, I think that there are people with very negative, kind of points of view that are feeding them information, and so sometimes they go a little too hard in the paint on some of that stuff, is what I've seen.
Well, and I think Matt Grizzly states it exactly correctly. I love both of them. I think they're fantastic. I continue to watch a lot of what they make when I have time. It does, however, feel as though they are kind of running on fumes. And so every little story, every little bit of whisper on the internet now gets covered. And so it's...
I would say that I would trust their analysis of the stuff you see on the internet as much as anybody else.
Daisy Girl just made a great recommendation for people to watch in our absence. Gavea's Watching the Watchers is a fantastic show.
Yeah,
Gavea is that lawyer. We've had him. We've featured his bits on the show a couple times.
Yeah, he's been. I've really liked most everything I've seen of him.
So, yeah, if you're looking for breakdown of what's going on, Gavea is a great place to go. Obviously, all of our lawyer friends. You guys, if you're here in this chat, it's very unlikely you don't already follow most of the lawyer friend space. So
Yeah.
I'd get into that, but I'll probably start mixing up their names again, and then they'll get mad at me.
All right, guys. I've got to get to bed early tonight. Well, not early, but it's midnight. But
projects are afoot, and there's only so much midnight oil to burn.
Absolutely. Appreciate all you guys for being here. If you haven't done already, please like the channel, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, like the show, and then if you would just share it out with your buddies out there. Let them know that in a week, this will be the best place that you can find stuff on international conflict and other looking around the corner to see where the next conflict in the world is coming from. Appreciate Joe for coming on with us. We had Jim on in the green room before the show started. Too bad he couldn't join us, but thanks for popping in there, Jim.
Technical difficulties. Yeah,
yes,
we appreciate
absolutely.
You, though.
Thanks, chat, for being here. Thanks to Joe and those guys. And as always,